This is going to work just like a normal class day, with the exception of the fact that you guys are at home and I am in my bedroom in my pajamas. So, let's go through Mary Rowlandson. The things you need to know about Mary Rowlandson, write these down. You need to know that Mary Rowlandson's captivity narrative was published in 1682, and that it was one of the most popular 17th century stories. If you need to pause this video so that you can write things down, that's fine. It's the nice thing about not being in real life is that you could take the time that you need. So if you're one of those people in class who writes a little bit slower, that's okay. Pause the video, and then you can move at your own speed. So you need to know that her captivity narrative was published in 1682, and that it was one of the most popular 17th century stories. Number 1, showcased the dangers the colonists faced. Number 2, showcased their attitude towards the Native Americans. And number 3, showcased their reliance on the Bible in times of trouble. Look at the picture of Mary Rowlandson on page 46. Look at this. What colors is she wearing? I know this isn't really a photo, but in the drawing, look at the colors that she has on. What colors are they? It's black and white, right? She looks very plain. Who else wore black and white? Take a minute. The Pilgrims and the Puritans. Mary Rowlandson was a Puritan, like many, many others, so she believed that the Bible was the ultimate authority for everything that she did. But in Mary Rowlandson's captivity narrative, her reliance on God and her trust in what His plan was for her shaped how she tells her story. And that's very important for us to recognize. You also need to know that it was written shortly after her captivity came to an end. And the part that you read in your textbook only showcases a few moves, or a few removes is what she calls them. But Mary Rowlandson experienced more than 20 removes during her time in captivity. And all that means is that she was moved from place to place. She was removed from place A and put in place B. And then a few days later, she was removed from place B and put in place C. And a few days later, she was removed from place C and put in place D. Okay? Last thing that you need to know about Mary Rowlandson, in terms of her background, is that even though she viewed the Native Americans who held her captive as satanic barbarians, she does record their acts of kindness towards her once in a while. And we're going to talk about those as we make our way through the story. Okay? So write that down. Alright. So, when you have all of that written down, and you have written down the terms that you need to know on page 47, okay, once you've written down this page, that has the analyze, read, and evaluate on it, then we need to talk about the story. When you have written all of those things down, I want you to go ahead and turn to page 48. If you have not read the narrative of the captivity and restoration of Mrs. Mary Rowlandson, you need to turn off the video and you need to go do that now. Because the quiz that you were supposed to have on her is still going to happen and I'm not going to give you the answers to it in this lecture. So you need to turn it off, go read, and then come back, rejoin us, and listen through the rest of the lecture, okay? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay. If you're still left, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk us through the story using those little questions that are off to the side that look like this. That's what we're going to talk about. So the first one is on page 48, and I want you to take a few minutes and read through the first paragraph with me, okay? It says, on the 10th of February, 1676, came the Indians with great numbers upon Lancaster. Their first coming was about sunrising. Hearing the noise of some guns, we looked out. Several houses were burning, and the smoke ascending to heaven. There were 5 persons taken in one house, the father and the mother and a sucking child. They knocked on the head. The other 2 they took and carried away alive. There were 2 others, who being out of the garrison upon some occasion were set upon. One was knocked on the head, and the other escaped. Another there was, who running along was shot and wounded, and fell down. He begged them his life, promising them money, as they told me, but they would not hearken to him, but knocked him in the head, and stripped him naked, and split open his bowels. Another, seeing many of the Indians about his barn, ventured and went out, but was quickly shot down. There were 3 others belonging to the same garrison who were killed. The Indians, getting up upon the roof of the barn, had advantage to shoot down upon them over their fortification. Thus these murderous wretches went on, burning and destroying before them. So, the first question says, what disparaging diction referring to the American Indians appears in the first paragraph? What disparaging diction? Disparaging means mean or bad for the purpose of this. Okay? So what words that make the Indians sound mean or bad are found in this first paragraph? I'm not going to tell you the answer right now. Okay? We will talk quickly about these things on Thursday. I want you to write down what you think the answer is. Okay, what words are they? If you're done, go ahead and flip to page 50. Okay, 49 is just this image of Mary Rowlandson. That's her carrying her child. You can see, sorry, I'm trying to do this backwards. You can see Native Americans on horseback back here. So go ahead and turn to page 50. Starting at the top of the page. We had 6 stout dogs belonging to our garrison, but none of them would stir. Though another time, if any Indian had come to the door, they were ready to fly upon him and tear him down. The Lord hereby would make us the more to acknowledge his hand, and to see that our help is always in him. But out we must go, the fire increasing and coming along behind us, roaring, and the Indians gaping before us with their guns, spears, and hatchets to devour us. I want to stop right there. I want you to write down the first 3 sentences on page 50. And after you've written them down, I want you to make a little note out to the side. Okay? Make a little note out to the side and put a star beside it. Because this is one of the first times that we see Mary Rowlandson mention the Lord. She says, in the second sentence, the Lord hereby would make us the more to acknowledge his hand, and the Lord hereby would make us the more to acknowledge his hand, and to see that our help is always in him. So after you've written down those first 3 sentences, I want you to put a little star by it, underline that second sentence, okay? And then I want you to translate it. Translate it to the best of your ability. Just tell me what that second sentence means. Okay? What does she mean by The Lord hereby would make us the more to acknowledge his hand, and to see that our help is always in him. Put that in modern day language. If you were going to say it, Morgan, or if you were going to say that, Anthony, what would you say? No sooner were we out of the house, but my brother-in-law, being before wounded in defending the house, in or near the throat, fell down dead, whereat the Indians scornfully shouted and howled, and were presently upon him, stripping off his clothes, the bullets flying thick. One went through my side, and the same, as would seem, through the bowels and hand of my dear child in my arms. One of my elder sister's children, named William, had then his leg broken, which the Indians perceiving, they knocked him on the head. Thus were we butchered by those merciless heathens, standing amazed with the blood running down to our heels. My eldest sister being yet in the house, and seeing those woeful sights, the infidels hauling mothers one way and children's another, and some wallowing in their blood, and her elder son telling her that her son William was dead, and myself was wounded, she said, "And Lord, let me die with them," which was no sooner said, but she was struck with a bullet, and fell down dead over the threshold. Stop right there. In your notes, I want you to write a short little sentence or a short little phrase that tells me what happened to Mary Rowlandson's sister in that part that I just read, just to check and make sure that you're able to translate this, okay? Because this is plain style, but it's not the type of plain writing that we are used to. So write down what happened to Mary Rowlandson's sister. I hope she is reaping the fruit of her good labors, being faithful to the service of God in her place. In her younger years she lay under much trouble upon spiritual accounts, till it pleased God to make that precious scripture take hold of her heart, 2 Corinthians 12:9. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee. More than 20 years after I have heard her tell how sweet and comfortable that place was to her. But to return, the Indians laid hold of us, pulling me one way and the children another, and said, Come, go along with us. I told them they would kill me. They answered, if I were willing to go along with them, they would not hurt me. All right, look off to the left of your book, and you'll see two sets of questions. I want you to skip the first one. We're not going to talk about that one, okay? And then I want you to look at the second one, God's sovereignty. In which sentence does Mary Rowlandson first refer to the Lord's hands in these affairs? I want you to answer that. We've already talked about it once, so if you missed it, go back about 5 minutes and start listening again. Okay? Answer that in your book. If you've already written it down, write it down again. And then I want you to skip one paragraph and look at kind of the bottom of page 50. Starts with, I had often before this said. Okay? I had often before this said that if the Indians should come, I should choose rather to be killed by them than taken alive. But when it came to the trial, my mind changed. Their glittering weapons so daunted my spirit that I chose rather to go along with those, as I may say, ravenous beasts, than that moment to end my days. And that I may the better declare what happened to me during that grievous captivity, I shall particularly speak of the several removes we had up and down the wilderness. You finished that one. You'll look off to the left and you'll see another question that says, what emotionally disparaging diction appears in the previous two paragraphs? I would like for you to write down at least 3 or at least 4. We're going to say 4. You guys are in 11th grade. You can do 4. At least 4 phrases or words. Okay, phrases or words that apply to this question. What emotionally charged, disparaging diction appears in the previous 2 paragraphs? I want you to start at the top of page 50 and then go all the way down to that question. Okay? At least 4 phrases or words that are disparaging. When you finish that, you can go on. We are now on page 51. No. Yes, 51. I'm sorry. We're down at the bottom. We're at from the third remove, down at the very bottom of 51. I sat much alone, with a poor wounded child in my lap, which moaned night and day, having nothing to revive the body or cheer the spirits of her. But instead of that, sometimes one Indian would come and tell me 1 hour that your master will knock your child in the head, and then a second, and then a third, your master will quickly knock your child in the head. What are they suggesting that they're going to do to Mary Rowlandson's baby that she's holding in her arms? So we have to appreciate the difficult situation Mary Rowlandson was in. She's listening to her own child die. She's already lost all of her family. She's been taken captive. She's lost her entire colony. And now she's in the woods with some Indians, listening to her child slowly die in her arms, and also being told that if you don't make the baby stop crying, we're going to hit it in the head and kill it even faster. It'll have no hope of recovery then. That's a very difficult situation to be in. This was the comfort I had from them. Miserable comforts were ye all, as he said. The 9 days I sat upon my knees with my babe in my lap, till my flesh was raw again, my child being even ready to depart the sorrowful world. They bade me carry it to another wigwam. I suppose they would not be troubled with such spectacles. Whither I went with a very heavy heart, and down I sat with a picture of death in my lap. About 2 hours in the night, my sweet babe, like a lamb, departed this life on February 18th, 1676. It being about 6 years and 5 months old, it was 9 days from the first wounding, in this miserable condition, without any refreshing of one nature or another, except a little cold water. I cannot but take notice how at another time I could not bear to be in the room where any dead person was, but now the case has changed. I must and could lie down with my dead babe side by side all the night after. I have since thought of the wonderful goodness of God to me, in preserving me in the use of my reason and senses in that distressed time, that I did not use wicked and violent means to end my own miserable life. I want you to tell me how many days it took from the time that Mary Rowlandson and her baby were injured to the time that her baby died. How many days did she have to carry her child with her? I want you to tell me why Mary Rowlandson praises God in the death of her baby. We're almost done. Hang out with me for about 5 more minutes, and I promise you'll be done. Okay? Here's the last thing. Mary Rowlandson responds incredibly well to being taken captive. She does. All things considered, she is still praising God. She is still making note of the various kindnesses of the Native Americans. She says in her story that they let her ride on a horse when she got tired of walking, and that was something they didn't have to do. And she makes note of that. She says that they did not immediately kill her child. They let it suffer for 9 days, which is debatably also cruel, but they did not murder her child in front of her, which shows a little bit of kindness, because they could have caused more trauma for her. And then she also records God's kindness to her in the end of her story, where she tells us that she laid beside her babe the night after, and how she thought about how good God was to her then. So in all these things, she is very, very open to God's will. And that was the Puritan way. But I want you to answer 2 questions for me, okay? The first question I want you to answer is, how do you think you would respond to captivity? How do you think God would expect you to respond? To answer these two questions, I want you to look up one of two verses, okay? I want you to look it up, I want you to write it down, and then I want you to tell me how you would use these two verses in helping you in times of trouble. The first verse is Daniel 4:35. Daniel 4:35. I want you to look it up. And the second verse is Romans 9:20. Romans 9:20. Answer those questions, and then you will be done. You still have vocab, exercises 1 through 3 for lessons 3 and 4, and you still have Of Mice and Men due, okay? Do your very best on Of Mice and Men. Remember that you can turn it in for a day late, but you will lose points. I hope you've had a good day. I hope you get to go play in the snow. I hope you get your work done. I hope you did almost all of it last night so that you could have a real day off minus this video. All that said, have a good day. Say hi to someone. Be nice to someone. Be kind to your parents. If they had to go to work, please don't leave them a messy house to come home to. Okay? And I love you very, very, very much. And I hope I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.